Hi, it's Andy.
Hi, it's Dave.
Hi, it's Kirk.
Welcome to the ADK Rock and Metal channel, and today we are back to the discussions review chat generator to see what we're going to talk about because we have no idea. Kirk, over to you. Hit the button.
Let's do it.
Oh, okay.
I'm not saying your head looks like a symbol, but
Fire
hey, blank pink, and again.
Fire blade!
No, we've had that.
Oh,
we've had that. Go
one.
again.
Third time unlucky. Ready?
Ooh,
Good
Okay,
question.
this is the question. How do you
I know
define
how
a
to
riff?
frame
Now,
that.
this could be very simple. Anything you play on guitar is a riff. You
I
play.
know how to frame this.
However, where did this come from? Well, because we've been really critical of bands from time to time, going, there's no real riffs there, it's a really weak riff, or the riff's non-memorable. So, there's a few times where we have actually said there's no real riff in this song. And then you kind of go for it and go, but anytime they're playing anything that's not a chord, it's a riff. So if they're playing anything where you're single note in it or anything, it's a riff.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, isn't the whole song just made up of multiple riffs? Is that how we define it?
I would, yeah.
Or so if you had four chords strung together, is that a riff? Or is that a chord progression? Or are they the same thing? So this is where I was kind of like, because people criticise us, sort of saying in one of our comments, going, they write amazing riffs, and we said there were no riffs in that song. Well, actually, Kirk said there was no riffs in that song.
That was the warning. That was
It was Kirk.
That was the warning, wasn't it?
It was the warning we talked about, and it made me think about it, going, so do we have a hierarchy of riff? Does it have to be, for us to class something as a riff, it has to be something that stands alone memorable, or is that how we define a riff? How do you define a riff? How do you define a riff? Or do we just go with what the term the definition is from the dictionary? If you looked it up and said what is a riff, you just use that. Kurt, over to you.
A good place to start. I was watching a video with Johnny Marr, famously of the Smiths, and he was showing he's done an exhibition of the guitars that he's used over the years, and he was talking about the Smith songs which were arpeggios, picking chords, and he was calling them riffs, and I paused. It's like, that's not a riff, that's a passage that repeats. You can't just be going that's not a riff, in my opinion.
No, it's not.
Doesn't devalue it, it's good guitar playing, but it's not a riff. At the same time, let's take that Nickelback song, I've been wrong, I've been right. Is there a riff in that song? I would argue no. Just because he steps on distortion and plays some ringing fifth chords in the chorus, that is a chord progression, just in distortion. So there's no riff to that. What is the difference between a riff and a hook? Well, a riff does need to have a hook, really, doesn't it? In some genres, it's defined by that syncopated chug, like in nu metal, in metalcore, in progressive metal and gent. Nirvana, Come As You Are, is that a riff? Arguably not.
So I would have said yes, that is.
Probably is, yeah, actually it is. And it's influenced by that Killing Joke song, 80s, isn't it? But
Okay, Smells Like Teen Spirit, is that a riff? Down, da, dun, down, down,
yeah,
down.
do you know
or
what
is that a chord progression?
I would say that's a riff because you've got that string muting in there. The punctuation makes that a riff. I know that they're simple chords, but I would say that is a riff. And as well, they played in the intro. It is the most memorable guitar part in there, so I would say that is a riff. Are there any? Yeah,
I'm thinking from Andy's point of view, as someone who plays guitar nomadic, when you're putting your tracks together, each part, do you class it as a riff?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, what is the sort of musical definition in the riff? Because I agree with you, Dave. It's anything you play on guitar that isn't, what did you just
Strumming, to me.
Yeah, strumming's not a riff.
If you're just strumming,
Wonderwall's
if you're
not a
strumming
riff.
E and then you move into that. But I would class that as just a chord passage.
Yeah, Wonderwall's the best example. It's not a guitar riff, is it? By Oasis.
Yeah, that's pop music.
But someone would say that it is. Some people would say that chord progression is a riff.
We three agree that it's not. We would just say you're strumming some chords. That's not a guitar riff.
If I would say if you're doing chords, but the chords are either muted or there's a variation in it, so it might be it's open, then you choke down on it, it becomes a riff.
Yeah, like Teen
Because
Spirit.
yeah, dun, 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 you're not going dun, 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 dun. If you're doing that, then it's just a chord progression because you've actually had to do something to punctuate it in some way, it becomes a riff.
But Andy, we cut you off there, so
Sorry.
you were gonna.
I just said, what's the musical definition of a riff, and is it solely the area of rock and metal?
Well, I don't think so.
You can have synth riffs. That genre of synthwave, they used bass lines, don't they? Like the metal riffs, like that new album from that artist Ghost, not Ghost, Ghost, signed to Metal Blade. He's using synths, but he plays it like a metal musician. Same with Perturbator. That's another example. So yeah, you
What?
can. Who? Perturbator.
Well, that's a fucking shit name, isn't it? Perturbator.
Perturbator.
All I can think of them, someone masturbator, is that's what's coming in my head.
It's not too far away from what's on your.
It's
Perturbator.
Hang on, Peter.
It comes from the word perturb, to be disturbed, to perturb. But it's not pronounced
Peter.
perturbator. I think people say perturbator as a play on masturbator, yeah.
That's just a bad
How do we
name.
get onto that?
No,
Why
because
you
there
brought it
are
up?
riffs.
This is
There
just
are
another
riffs,
name.
there are
It's just-
riffs in
Sorry.
that
Yeah,
music.
okay.
Same with Carpenter Brute. You know, so yeah, outside of rock and metal there are riffs. Techno, surely that's a riff, isn't it?
It's not just holding chords and moving it.
Yeah, so certainly in
So it
some
needs to
forms of dance
be
music, you have a riff.
it's anything that has a form of punctuation within it.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah,
So it can be a chord. It can be a chord progression as long as it has a punctuation.
but saying that, Black Sabbath by Black Sabbath, is that a riff? The single note parts are the vibrato. But if you just played that as ringing chords, are we saying that would not be a riff? Because doom metal, often then
It's
we
not
could say
strums
they're not-
though. So the punctuation
Yeah.
is
Oh,
actually
it's
the
down.
pause.
Yeah.
It's the fact that you're leaving a pause.
Yeah.
If you're strumming to the tempo, then I think it's a chord progression. It's no longer a riff. If the riff is like dum tss, dum tss, you jan 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 jan. But it's a really difficult one because the whole idea of this came up was because we said there was no real riffs in the song. The question was when we thought go back to that song, was there a riff there that we were just dismissing it? Which I think was the actual case, because it was a lot of strumming, but there were little tails in it. So it was an actual riff. But then what annoys me is when we see people who comment on those songs and they're like, "That's one of the best riffs I've ever heard," and you just go and go, "You're
downstrumming chords."
It's
Yeah.
downstrumming chords with a little tail off." So it's not a great riff, but it works with the
It
song.
helps. I mean, that's another technical term. It helps to have a tag at the end of the riff. I
Yeah.
got that word from an interview with Soundgarden. They were talking about one of the songs. They said, "Our favourite part in this riff is the tag at the end." It's like, that's going in a future review, so I pretend to know what I'm talking about. So a tag.
So what's the tag then?
So
The Soundgarden riff.
There's this riff, and they're just playing. I think they're in drop D. Do 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 do. And actually, it's a riff. But at the end, they throw in this extra scale. It goes ding ding, like with this trill, legato technique.
A better example would be Enter Sandman. Tag is
What about
That last bit at the
what
end of
about
the riff is the
Megadeth? The clearly that's a
That's
riff,
a tag,
isn't it?
that-
Yeah, you got
that's a good
syncopation.
Yeah, so that's a simple one to do. So
Symphony
I think
disruption.
the clarity is anything that has got dynamics, whether that's pausing or whatever it needs to be, but it's basically not strummed. It can
Yeah.
be classed as a riff.
You're moving away from just playing chords, aren't you? Pinch harmonics,
Yeah.
scale runs, certainly in rock and metal.
It's a really pointless conversation we're having today, but it's I don't know why it was
How
important.
do you define a riff?
But
Andy, we
I don't know.
need you to nail it.
I can't. I mean, answer your question. When we do, or when we do the Pneumatic Rain songs, every section is a riff, but then they probably are based on what you two have just said. Although there's a sort of a clean sort of single note passage in one of the songs, and we call it the passage, or
Yeah.
so we don't call it that riff or riff 4 or whatever. So I think it's certain sort of recognised rock and metal guitar playing that you've kind of distinguished some that
There's a
possibly aren't.
checklist
I
of
don't
minimal
know.
amount of techniques that need to be involved for a rock or metal riff.
we need to ask the audience.
I'm sure
It's
that-
50-50, phone a friend.
I think there'll be lots of comments about this from
Guitarists.
guitarists,
One-
musicians.
Actually, one more example. Sweet Child of Mine. If he played that as a chord, ringing out, instead of playing the actual string skipping parts, and it was like. just picking it, that wouldn't be a riff, would it? But because he's
Would if
played
he's
them
picking
as
it.
single notes, it's really difficult to do. String skipping, that's a riff for me.
That's whether it's the quality of what you judge as a riff, don't know. I don't know. Ask the audience on this one.
Yeah.
Phone a friend. Let us know what you
Chris
think
Tyler.
in the comments down below. Always greatly appreciated. How do you define a riff? Thank you very much for watching. See you on another video sometime very soon. Take care.